Hello, everybody. Welcome. I see people are joining in. Welcome, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your previous session in grooving and dancing. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it to that session, but I'm very much excited to hear all about it. All right. I see people are still coming in, so we're just going to give it a few more minutes as more people join our discussion today. Amazing. Okay, so we're going to get started. So welcome to panel number 2 of the day, and the topic of this panel is utilizing identity to advocate for meaningful change. I'm going to be the moderator of this panel today, and I'm really excited to be here. My name is Amina Osman. I am the program manager here at Jumpstart Refugee Talent, and I work on the Welcome Talent Mentorship Program. What I'm hoping for in this theme is to explore the power of identity and its role in advocating for meaningful change. So we're going to dive into the personal narratives and experiences of our panelists today. I really hope to shed light on the importance of embracing your identity and your journey to create social change. So to the people who are joining the session today, I really encourage you to connect with us through, the Q&A. If you have any questions about, your identity journey here in Canada, and some of the barriers that you face in utilizing your identity to advocate for meaningful change, or if you just have any comments, please engage with us through the Q&A as well as just in the comments section. So now I'm going to pass it on over to the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we're going to jump right into the question and answers, the questions of the panel. So I would like to pass the mic over to Lolly. Please help me welcome Lolly.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you, Amina, for the invitation and for this good conference. My name is Lolly Rico, and I'm the Executive Director of the FCJ Refugee Center. And I'm a refugee. I came 33 years ago, and from El Salvador. And one of the things that make me because I'm the founder of the organization with my partner, one of the things that make me to do that was because I could see the difference between different categories of refugees. And that's why I started serving refugee claimants and precarious migrants.
Thank you, Lolly. Go ahead, Boban.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me today in this very special occasion. My name is Boban Stojanovic. I am Vice President of Vulnerable Population Services at the Center for Newcomers here in Calgary. I am also a refugee myself. I came through inland claimant stream. 7 years ago, I moved to Canada along with my partner. We moved from Serbia. There we were human rights activist in a few fields of activism, starting from anti-war reconciliation and LGBTQ plus issues. So at some point, our life there became too risky and too complicated. So we decided to move to a safe place, and that is how we found ourselves in Canada.
Amazing. Thank you, Boban. Go ahead, Youssef.
My name is Youssef Araya. I'm the interim executive director of Catholic Cross-Cultural Services, also the director of the Refugee Sponsorship Training Program. I'm originally from Eritrea. I've been here for the last 23 years, and I am also a refugee due to my involvement in studying law and journalism. So I've been here for the last almost 2 decades, working in the refugee sector. So we'll talk about my experience, but that's who I am.
Lovely. Amazing. Thank you so much, panelists. I am so excited to talk to you and learn about your journeys and your advocacy work as well. So we're going to jump right into the questions. Lolly, as the co-founder and executive director of FCG Refugee Center, you work extensively with vulnerable groups, as you've mentioned in your introduction. How has your personal experience as a refugee from El Salvador shaped your approach to advocating for human rights and social change?
Well, one of the things, thank you very much, make me a lot of to reflect when you did that question and sent it to us, because I came as a government-assisted refugee, and I keep saying I'm a golden refugee, because we were choose to come to Canada, and we learned, my husband and I, that there were different type of refugees, and we thought when I came that everybody was treated the same way. And we start seeing the Salvadorians crossing the borders, because at that time you can make a claim at the border or crossing the Peace Bridge, they were in different situations, that they have to be in homeless shelters, that they need to be looking for housing. At the same time, they need to prove that their case was a genuine, and they need to be refugees. And in that case, we start seeing more single women coming. And we were looking in the shelters, and that's how we decide, because the place where we were living was given to Salvadorian refugees. We decided to open the house with 2 bedroom and welcoming them, to be fair, because I'm coming from a human rights perspective. And I think, to be fair and to look on the human rights, everybody who comes to Canada and they look for protection, they should be granted refugee.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with you. I have to say, I'm going to really steal the golden refugee. I think that's incredible. I am a government assisted refugee myself, and I didn't know about refugee claimants either until after I arrived in Canada. And I thought to myself, oh, wow, like we really are, quote unquote, the chosen one. And so I really love the idea of golden refugee, and I think you're absolutely right in talking about some of the issues that refugee claimants face. I think it's definitely a lot harder for refugee claimants than government assisted refugees, and that's something that I had to learn myself in my journey. What incredible work you do. Amazing. So Boban, this is a question for you. So you're not only a human rights and anti-war activist, but you're also a poet. So I wanted to ask you, how has your refugee identity and experience influenced your artistic expression and your efforts to make a difference for vulnerable populations, especially when it comes to gender-based violence?
Thank you so much for this question. I received your question like a few days ago, and it makes a lot of trouble to me because, my brain just started thinking, and it was like unstoppable. But I think it was like really good process for myself, because I never thought about all these things and how much like each and every like thing in our life is basically connected, and how much we can use even our traumas to transform into something what can help other people. And talking about my life journey and my life experience, and why I'm so much passionate about, for example, gender-based violence. I mean, to help like victims of gender-based violence, and especially women, is because I grow up in I will like to say like dysfunctional family. My father was like truck driver. He was absent from home. So I grew up with my mother, 2 grandmothers, and a lot of like other women around them. So sometimes I like to say I don't know how to think as a man. I know like how women around me thinks. So all these women, they really like shape my experience. They shape the way how I think. And being surrounded by women also helped me to understand a little bit better like position of women at that time in my community, and how much women are like the privileged, how much they're not supported by broader community, and what is they basically like role in society around me. So that is how I start to think. And like I like to identify myself as also as like feminist. And back home, I spend a lot of time working and supporting different kind of like women right causes. And I was like really involved in women and feminist movement back home, and I try to do that a little bit here. But then after I moved to Canada, and when I found my place here at the Center for Newcomers, I noticed how much support is needed, especially like for not immigrant women, but like refugee women, and especially those who are refugee claimants. And I'm super happy because I had very supportive like environment here at the Center for Newcomers. So a few years ago, we developed a program where I am like fully involved, program for vulnerable clients. And this huge part of this program is also about like women and like how to support women properly, especially for example now like how to support Afghan women who are like particularly vulnerable, and any other who needs any kind of support and understanding and love. We are here to help them. And just to briefly respond to part of your question, like how all this experience influence my artistic work. Well, I think it's very important if I already have some space to say something, even if it is like poetry. My poetry, I like to share stories about my personal experience, experiencing like domestic violence and everything that my mom went through, and my grandmothers, and many other women. So I am super happy. I'm still writing poetry in my first language because poetry is very sensitive, and sometimes I'm very afraid like maybe I will never get there to write like my poetry in English. So it's still like in Serbian in my first language, but I can see how many people can understand and empathize with what I'm doing. So I'm very happy if like my poetry touch at least one heart at a time. It's some kind of like success.
Absolutely. Okay, so maybe I need to learn Serbian just to read your poetry. I think it's really incredible. I mean, I would love to touch on what you talked about in terms of advocacy using different forms. For me specifically, I think so I had this discussion with my sister the other day. She's in accounting, but at the same time, she's also she's very passionate about refugee work, and so she's always asking me about what I'm doing. And I was telling her, I was like, there's other forms of advocacy. I really encourage even the people watching today, even if you want to advocate for refugee issues or any type of social change, there is space to do that in so many different forms other than, being an outspoken advocate, especially for those of you who don't want to be outspoken or are not comfortable doing that. I know for me personally, I think one way to advocate is through dance and through some of the things that I learned in my own refugee camp, some of the different songs I've learned in all the different languages. We have Kinyarwanda, Burundi, Congolese people. That's one of the beauties of coming from a refugee camp. You come from such a diverse group, and to share that in an artistic way and also in a way of advocacy, I think is really beautiful. So thank you so much, Boban, for sharing that, and hopefully we can read your poetry someday when you're comfortable to write in English as well. Amazing. Okay, so Yusuf, this question is for you. As the interim director of Catholic Cross Cultural Services and the director of the Refugee Sponsorship Training Program, you have deep understanding of refugee sponsorship issues. How has your experience as a refugee informed your work in empowering and supporting refugees through the sponsorship program?
This is an interesting question. I think for me, I have, as I said, I went through a refugee claim process in Canada. I came as an international student, and then while I was here, the situation in my country has changed. I ended up making a refugee claim. So I went what I am called a refugee surplus, which means someone who had become a refugee because of a change in country conditions. So going from international student to a refugee claimant, and then you applying for permanent resident to a citizen. So it's a very long and complicated process. So that process stays with me, and for me, it helped me in terms of looking the work in terms of supporting another refugee. And also in the refugee sponsorship training program, our job is we don't directly deal with refugees, but we deal with refugee sponsors. We train them and support them so that they would welcome and assist other refugees. So my experience always shaped in terms of the training that we offer about the country condition, the conditions that refugees face in the second country or the country of asylum. When we're looking at their narration, when you're looking at their assessment, so it made me to be more sensitive and more appreciate some of the factors, and also conveying the same to the sponsors that we support. For instance, sometimes sponsors they struggle why, depending on our experience, some are new, some they struggle why the refugees they don't have the birth certificate, why they don't have the marriage certificate, why they don't have that document, or so you would understand in this circumstance, it would be difficult for them to travel through a passport, through a document. So you try to relay the experience. So my experience or the experience of other refugee helps me to inform other sponsors when they are dealing with refugee. And sometimes there are different circumstances that happens, and being part of the community or going through that experience, it makes you appreciate more the factors and also help you to train the sponsors that are dealing with those circumstances.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, that's one thing we definitely believe at, even at Jumpstart Refugee Talent, in terms of like by refugees for refugees. Like, this is what we stand for. I think you're absolutely right in saying that your refugee experience has helped you do your job more effectively, because you've had that experience, and like you said, you're more empathetic that way. I have a very quick like follow-up question with that as well. Do you find that with your work, having the refugee experience, but also working in the refugee space, has also impacted you in any way negatively, just because you're so connected to the experience yourself, or?
No, it really it hasn't impacted me negatively. In fact, I'm very grateful actually to work in this sector. It always gives me the pleasure to help another person. Of course, we have also a lot of limitation. For instance, where the impact is, we get a lot of emails from overseas people who want to come and they're desperate. So those are really heartbreaking. I think those are difficult, I have to say. Of course, they impact you emotionally, and you get full application sometimes with my name. Address it to me. Somebody finds my name and saying that please help me. Sometimes full application with photos and with pictures, not only with my name but with the name of our organization. That makes it difficult. And you could provide them information, but they're not looking at information. They're looking to sponsor them. Because if they find you, it means they are more informed. They are able to research. So those are, I found them the most difficult part, that you are very limited in what you are able to do, but the demand is so much. There are a lot of people want to come, and given, even we heard how many millions are displaced. So the number of people that need our help is significant, but we have very, very limited capacity. That is the difficult part usually.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Thank you so much for sharing yourself. So this question is to all the panelists. How do you believe embracing and sharing your personal narratives as refugees can contribute to meaningful change and positive social impact within the society? Anyone?
I can start.
Okay.
I think give us a kind of validation, and also to understand what is the challenges that refugees face, but also because we live the experience, we have the passion, at least for me, that we can do that change. I feel that as I came and I'm well established, I need to keep the door open, because that's how we say in our organization, our doors are open, because they are, as Yusuf is saying, there are like more than 100 million people displaced. And Canada is a big country, and we can accommodate more what we receive. And also, we are giving a contribution to the country. And I believe that when I say I'm a refugee, I look where I am, look what I contributed, that give a validation that if we have the right programs, the right resources, we can open the door for the ones that they have to come. It's not to choose, is to accept anyone who come to our doors. And that, because to come to Canada is hard. Some of them, they have been walking all Central America, cross United States and come here. Oh, look, they take boats and they go all the way to the Mediterranean and cross Europe, and sometimes they end up here. And in that case, I think whoever is coming here give us the possibility that we can say we know what they live and to bring their voice, because we are in a privileged position where we can do that and walk with them as well.
Absolutely. Completely agree with you. Thank you so much, Leon. Lonnie. Boban or Yusuf?
Yeah, I can completely agree with Lolly, and it's very well said. So thank you, Lolly. And I just want to add that like what is very important for our work is to keep this hope alive, hope of all those people who choose Canada, but like any other country, as their new home, because I think the it's their biggest fear. What if nobody understand my experience? What if nobody understand my language? What if nobody understand like whatever? So sometimes now because I change my position, so I'm not involved with like work with clients on my daily base, but like earlier I was very involved working with clients, and sometimes people, they don't know even to explain what they went through or why they are here or whatever, but they have hope. Their life will be like better, they will find better life, they will find some kind of like safety or whatever is there. So it's part of our work, and I think being a refugee and helping other refugees, it's also like healing process for many of us, because it's not easy if you leave your country in your like 40s or 50s. So like so many refugees, they had like amazing career back home, and then something's happened and they were like forced to flee. So um, we are here to support each other and to help each other and to understand above anything else each other, and also to create opportunity for each other.
If I can jump on this one, I think for me, it's very important because it does also help into dealing with the stigma that comes with being a refugee, because sometimes there are negative connotations that are associated with being with refugee, with being poor, being a burden to society, less educated. So I think embracing that narration, it helps us in fighting to that myth. So you could be refugees could come in any form. We always use the word Albert Einstein was a refugee. So, which means you could be the smartest person, you could be the most educated, you could be the poor, you could be anyone. So any one of us could become a refugee. I think having that, owning that narration, and then also being proud of who you are, I think that might help in changing the attitude on refugees or refugee issues. Because sometimes even former refugees or children of refugee, they want to shy away from being the word refugee because they still feel it's negative, right? So for us, I think that's key. There's nothing wrong with that being a refugee. Anyone could be a refugee. So owning that narration, it does help in terms of changing the attitude and the meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Joseph, you just talked about something that's also very, I think, personal to me and my journey. When it comes to embracing and sharing the narrative of being a refugee is something like you just mentioned. A lot of, I think, especially youth, because my refugee experience is very much rooted in my youth. I came to Canada when I was just entering my teenage years, And for the longest time, it's like, oh, I don't want to be called a refugee because there's so many different connotations that's attached to the name that I didn't necessarily agree with. And I didn't even know about until I came to the Western world. Refugees are here to take our jobs, and refugees don't speak English, and refugees are not smart enough, etc. And I think as a youth, coming into those narratives, it was extremely difficult for me to come to the acceptance and to stop running away from it. So once I did, I'm so thankful to my English teacher, who really pushed me to take ownership into that identity and really lean into it as sort of my superpower. And I'm so grateful that I did that at an early age, because once I did that, I think the other girls and other people, other youth in my community saw it as something that's not so negative, something that's, we come from experiences where we have extremely diverse people. We've learned multiple languages. We've gone through things that other people haven't gone through that's made us extremely strong. We look at hope in a different light, and we look at life, even the struggles that we see in life, as something that we will get through with hope and strength. So I think once you realize that and you embrace that sort of narrative of being a refugee, it really makes a difference, and it makes such a bigger difference, because then you start to believe in yourself and you get the education that you want, and you feel like you're also Canadian and you can get the same opportunities as other Canadians. And then young refugees see that, and then they're like, oh, okay, so I can go to school. I can, take positions of power. And I think that's so meaningful and so powerful. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on this. Okay, so this question is for you, Lolly. In your bio, you mentioned about the importance of creating a safe environment for vulnerable groups. Why is it important to create safe and inclusive spaces?
I believe that one of the things that when you come and you have been suffering a trauma, you don't trust anyone. And when you come to a place, and if you come to Toronto to the FCJ Refugee Center, it's a house, because most of the time, you lose is your own place, your own home, and to feel safe in a way that you can come to a place where you can have a warm food, where you can be welcoming after going through a hard journey and with all the trauma, give you the possibility to start in the process of the healing process, but also give you the possibility that you can focus on your refugee process where you can stay. Around the world, there is so much violence against, especially the gender violence, is so hard that it's really, you lost in that experience. People lost the trust. And it's very hard because sometimes you give the trust to the smugglers to bring you here. You give the trust, even sometimes the perpetrator is your own partner. And in that case, it's very hard to start getting that trust. And if you go to a place where you feel safe, you start earning again that trust that give you the possibility that you can start embracing yourself, empower yourself, and start being yourself and contributing. Because one of the things always I said, we just know, when you come to Canada, you're just not born. We were refugees and we were adults in our countries. We are people that we come with a lot of experience. But because all the trauma that we suffer, we need to have a place where we can regroup together ourselves and start building that trust and start creating that environment where it make us to grow up and be who we are, and to use all the skills that we learn from our countries and put it together. And that's, I believe, is central. If you feel safe, you can start even telling your story. Because Boban was saying at the beginning is to give them, sometimes people, they don't want to talk to you because they don't know how you will react. But if you give them that environment, people will start talking a little by little, and then we can, could be a successful story.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you, and I really encourage the people who are joining us today to create inclusive spaces for everyone, whether it's in your home or whether it's at work or whether it's at school. I think it's very, very important. I know from my personal experience, having an inclusive space, especially at school, was something that had really affected me academically. So I think the takeaway message here is really just always be mindful about your environment, whether it's the office or wherever you are, and make it inclusive for everyone, all the groups. So thank you so much, Loli. Boban, this question is for you. So your passion for human rights is evident. How can the refugee experience be a powerful tool in advocating for the rights of vulnerable groups? And what advice do you have for people who want to challenge systemic injustices?
Well, everything we know as human beings is based in some stories. Everything is about storytelling. Even if we want to advocate and lobby for some new law or any kind of like change on like very high level, like I don't know, if we want to do that like with government or like I don't know, provincial government on a city level, even like in our work environment, everything is based in how we will share our story. And I think our stories are very important, they are very valuable. And thinking from like refugee perspective, I deeply believe that like sharing refugee stories can help not only like refugees to heal and to feel more dignity and to feel more like human being, like valuable human being, worth human being, but also it can help, especially here in Canada, it can help like broader community to understand how much they are privileged, how much they are comfortable, how much they have, because sometimes I will be I feel free to share these kind of thoughts, but sometimes like talking with my Canadian friends, people who are like born and raised here, and if they complain on something, I'm like, oh my God, you don't know what life can be. Not just like how much like hard, because I appreciate each and every experience, and we are different, like we are different people, so our experience is different, but we don't have the same opportunities, we don't have same chances, we don't simply, we are like so different in different parts of the world. So I think um, by sharing our stories and advocating through like storytelling or something like that, it can really help Canadian society to become better society and to understand other people a little bit better and to be more grateful for what they have. Because what I can see as enormous capital of each and every refugee is about that like incredible potential of starting your life again, and it's all about like resiliency, it's all about like power of people, like once you think you're on the bottom of your life and here you're like there again and you will continue. And I think that is what so many people in this country and in this world can learn from refugees, not like how to restart your life or like how to like restart your career or something like that, but how to keep that dignity and that willingness to continue your life however it is hard.
I absolutely agree with you, Boban. I think there's so much power in owning your story, and like you talked about the power of storytelling and sharing that, and it has such a huge impact on society. And for those of you who don't have the refugee experience, giving that space to people who do have the refugee experience to tell their story and have their voices heard, I think is extremely important. So thank you so much for that. Okay. So Youssef, this question is for you. In your experience as co-chair of a working group in the Canadian Council for Refugees, what strategies or initiatives have you seen that effectively utilize the refugee identity to bring about tangible change in policy or services for refugees and other vulnerable populations?
Thank you. I guess Loli could also help on this question because Loli has been, and our dear Francisco, they were the co-chairs of the presidents of the Canadian Council for Refugees. But I could say from my experience, I think for me, I have grown a lot within the CCR community. First, I was a refugee claimant when I first contacted the CCR, and they invited me to come to the working group meeting in Montreal, and then I was able to connect with other community members. And then since then, I've been coming to the CCR events. And one thing that worked very well is first, it's a very welcoming community. So the CCR has welcomes refugees and newcomers, and it gives the platform for them to contribute in many ways. There is this Amina Mako Fund where refugees who need support to participate conferences. So that fund allows for those who are selected to go to different events. And even with the leadership of the CCR, always an encouragement for refugees to take that leadership position. Now it has become a very, how do you say, normal practice or accepted practice. We need to have a meaningful participation of refugees, but the CCR has been doing this for many, many years. I think, I went to the annual tripartite consultation back in 2006, 2007. I was very even green in my knowledge, but there was an intention to send someone with refugee experience with another experience. So with Janet, who was the executive director of CCR, the two of us, we went to represent Canada at a high level. So at that time, talking about a few years ago now, it has a lot of refugees has participated, but those are where I could see the CCR has been very effective in giving the platform and allowing refugees to lead. And also, it's not about tokenism. There was something which also very meaningful within the CCR context is you're not there because they need another Black person on the panel. No, because it's also not about representation is important, but at the same time, being heard and being able to influence. So for me, often we have workshops. During workshops, we bring ideas, and then those workshops they get discussed. We go to the AGM, we pass a resolution, and then that resolution gets sent to the government in terms of an advocacy, an action that we need to be taken, or a policy that needs to be changed. So whatever you have done at the workshop, it gets translated into a policy statement or an action statement, gets to the government. Sometimes the government acts upon it, sometimes it doesn't, but you have given the chance to influence the policies that shape our country. So I found all those components working very well. Meaningful participation, I would say, in that context. Loli, you could add, but I could say from my perspective. Because Loli, yeah.
I can jump if you want in that, but one of the things is that the Canadian Council for Refugees give the opportunity to that refugees we can speak up from the experience, but also one of the things that, for example, Yusuf, when he was a co-chair, is to let the members to speak up and to bring what is the reality in the ground, and then we in the leadership at the CCR is to bring that experience and what is happening, that reality in the ground, to the government in a way that when they do policy changes, they can see what is the impacts that does in the life of people, no? And that's, I believe, that's something that with the uniqueness of the Canadian Council for Refugees is that give the space for us as a refugees and newly arrivals to come at and speak and bring what is the reality.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that there is space for that at government level and at policy level. I think Canada is doing a great job. There's always room for improvement, obviously, to get more refugee voices heard. But I think the work that's already going on is amazing, and I hope that it continues that way. We do have a question from the attendees here. So one of the question is from Jawad. Jawad said, many people are eligible to claim refugee status in Canada, but there are too many barriers in between. What can be done to address these concerns? So big question there from Jalad. Any answers?
Well, I can count one of the biggest barriers is right now the Safe Third Country Agreement, because right now the borders are closed and people is putting their life at risk even to cross to Canada. I think one of the things that we should do is to speak up about that barriers. And also one of the main barriers that we have is not just the closing of the border, but also the no access to services for refugee claimants, because the services is only related if in the city where you live, if there is access, or in the province, because the federal government doesn't allow the refugee claimants can have that access, even though the acceptance rate is right now more than 60%. And in that case, that's something that we should do, is to really to ask to the federal government to open up and give them the opportunity. In that way, you can remove a little bit of the barriers.
I definitely agree.
Absolutely. I only can agree with Lolly. Yeah. Access to services is a big issue. And especially in like cities who are maybe not like big, like Toronto or Montreal or even like Calgary, people really, really struggle to access basic services, even like food bank or some like super basic housing, because they're not recognized. They look like just like visitors or something like that. So yeah, we have to work a little bit more to let government know what those people are going through, and hopefully to change this situation. I'm super happy to have like very supportive work environment here at the Center for Newcomers. So we welcoming everyone, and immigration status is not like important to us. So like until you are like newcomer of any stream, you are very welcome here, and we will give our best to support all people.
Absolutely. And I have to say, like, this question is definitely like a heavy one, but I think even for those people who know how to do research and find the right resources, the system is so extremely complex that you could be, English could be your first language and you still wouldn't be able to navigate. I think one thing that the government could definitely do well in is just like making it clear on the step-by-step on how to, fill out a form to be a refugee claimant or whatever it may be. It doesn't need to be so extremely complex and hard to navigate. And so I definitely think that's one area. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of this amazing discussion. Thank you so much, Lolly, Boban, and Yusuf for taking the time to be here today and to have this extremely important and meaningful discussion. I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm so happy to have met you guys, and I'm really excited to connect with you and hope that our paths will one day cross again. So thank you so much for being here. I wanted to inform everyone that we still have 30 minutes to network, meet the vendors, meet the businesses, meet the authors, meet the artists. I know it's so hard to network sometimes, and I really challenge you and encourage you to just throw yourself out there and talk to some people today. I promise you'll be just fine. So I also wanted to remind you to keep an eye on your emails. Tomorrow there's going to be an announcement. There'll be a virtual goodie bag. The prize winners will be announced, so stay tuned for that. Very exciting. And there will also be a survey, so let us know how you enjoyed this expo today. Tell us your thoughts so that we can do better in the future. We sincerely want to thank all of the people who attended today. Thank you to all of our sponsors and our collaborators, our panelists. I know Ellie and the team worked really hard to put this together there, so thank you so much for putting this together. I wish everybody a happy World Refugee Month and World Refugee Day tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amina.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
Lolly and
Amina.
Boban.
Thank you. Bye, Boban.
Thank you
Bye,
very much.
Joseph.
Bye-bye.